Bro, you seeing what I am seeing right now? Because if you are not paying attention to what Adam Peters is building here in Washington in this 2026 offseason, then fam, you need to sit down, open your eyes, and lock in, because this is not a drill. This is not some let us see what happens experiment. This is a front office that decided last year was enough suffering, enough inconsistency, enough of watching Jaden Daniels just survive instead of dominate, and they said never again, and they are backing that up with action, with money, with moves, with vision, and I am here to break it all down for you piece by piece, because if you are a Commanders fan and you are not fired up right now, bro, you need to check your pulse, because something is off. What Washington has done in these first weeks of the 2026 free agency period goes way beyond just plugging holes. This is not slapping a Band-Aid on a wound. This is major surgery. This is a complete reimagining of who the Commanders are as a team, what they want to be on offense, what they want to project on defense, and how they want the rest of the NFC, including Dallas, Philly, and the Giants, to look at them when they step on that field on Sunday. And the short answer to that is this: as a problem, as a real threat, as a team that is done being satisfied with potential and is ready to put real results on the board. We have 3 stories today that explain exactly why I am this amped, and all 3 are connected in a way that once you see the whole picture, you are going to understand the full plan Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have for this squad. We're going to talk about an explosive tight end who is about to be the spark Jaden Daniels has been needing for a long time. We're going to talk about a $100 million pass rusher who already sounds like a real Commander. And we are going to talk about an LSU cornerback who might be the piece that finally closes this defensive puzzle once and for all. So stay right here, because this is just getting started. News 1, Odafe, the $100 million pass rusher who already talks like a Commander. Listen, when a team hands a pass rusher a 4-year, $100 million deal, the bare minimum you expect is that this dude understands why that check got written, that there is a grasp of the system, of the culture, that there is real hunger. And what Odafe said in that first presser with the Commanders was not just what you wanted to hear. It was exactly, word for word, what Dan Quinn needed to hear, what the fans needed to hear. What this team has been chasing for a long time in an outside pass rusher who comes in from somewhere else and becomes part of this defense's identities. Because look at what Owe said: I am versatile. And if I am put in any type of situation, any type of scheme, I know I am going to find a way to create production. Bro, you hear that? There was no, I need the perfect scheme. No, just line me up in my favorite spot every snap. It was line me up wherever and I will figure out how to make plays. That is a different mindset. That is somebody who understands that in modern NFL football, versatility is not optional. It is survival. And it just so happens that this is exactly what Durante Jones is looking for in this defense. And let us talk about Jones for a second, porque hay que darle su crédito. This defensive coordinator is building something real in Washington. The philosophy is not stiff. This is not one of those defenses that lives and dies with a static scheme that opponents can pick apart on film and neutralize before week 1. Jones wants players who can adapt, who can mess with quarterbacks by changing pre-blitz looks, who can generate pressure from multiple angles without telegraphing where it is coming from. In that context, Owe is literally the prototype you want. This is not just a pure speed edge rusher. There is enough ability there to drop into coverage, to stunt inside, to operate in space. The profile fits like a glove. But let us be real and pull up the numbers. Porque los números no mienten. Last year with the Chargers, and remember, this was a midseason rental, a last-minute move from Baltimore. This dude put up 7.5 sacks in just 12 games. 12 games, that is double-digit sack pace over a full year. On top of that, 13 quarterback hits, 28 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss. You know what that tells you? It tells you Owe is not just a sack artist. This is a disruptor on every down. Somebody doing the dirty work too, setting the edge against the run, living in the backfield on a regular basis. And bro, this has to be said, the fact those numbers came while being a mid-season rental Jumping on a moving train into a brand new system with teammates barely known on a team fighting for a playoff spot that says more about the character and the professionalism than any single stat. That kind of player knows ball and knows how to adapt. That is rare. Now let us get into the money because there are fans who see $100 million and get nervous. That is understandable. This fan base has been burned before with contracts that promised a lot and delivered next to nothing, but you have to understand the current pass rusher market in the NFL. An edge rusher with OA's level of quality in this market is going to cost that. The salary cap keeps climbing, and locking in a 26-year-old who has already shown production in different systems, who brings the right mentality, who fits the culture Dan Quinn is building, that is not wasted money. That is a strategic investment. And this front office read that before the market got even hotter. And let us talk culture because Quinn has been crystal clear since day one. The goal is not just stacking talent. The goal is stacking high-character players who build a real brotherhood and raise everyone around them. OA spoke on that too, talked about how the Commanders laid out exactly how this player fits this scheme, how they will create one-on-one situations, how the plan is built specifically to maximize what OA does best. You know what that tells a player? It says, we see you. It says, we get who you are. And when a player feels that from day one, the commitment level to that locker room jumps. Now zoom out to the full defensive line picture. Washington has already locked in some pieces inside. Now OA is set on the edge. Opposing quarterbacks are going to have to pick their nightmares. Are you worried about the interior or the outside? Are you clocking pocket time from inside pressure or edge pressure? When you cannot ignore either side, the decision time crashes. And when a quarterback's decision time goes down, mistakes show up, picks start happening, strips and fumbles start popping up, drive-killing sacks start stacking. This 2026 Commanders defense has the potential to be one of the most disruptive units in the NFC. And Odafe Owe, with that mindset, those numbers, and that clean fit in Jones's system is one of the main reasons. Bro, this is what a front office does when it is truly ready to win. They do not just stand there. They move, and they just moved. Okay, fam, but hold up, because the offense moved too, and what they did at tight end is going to completely change Jaden Daniels' whole dynamic. And once you hear what Chig Okonkwo said about what this offense is about to get from this signing, bro, you're going to understand why I am this hyped. News 2, Chig Okonkwo. The spark Jaden Daniels has been waiting for. Let us hit something that was a real problem, and that way too many people downplayed all through the 2025 season. This Commanders offense, even when Jaden Daniels was healthy and on the field, did not consistently have that ability to turn small gains into big ones. The run game was there for sure. Terry McLaurin was out there being Terry. Like always, and with Deebo Samuel in the mix, you have another legit weapon, but the passing game was missing one specific element. That receiver who catches the ball with 5, 6, 7 yards of space in front, and instead of just taking the hit and living with it, decides that tackle is not happening. A player who turns those 5 yards into 15. Who takes what the defense gives and sends back more than anybody expected at tight end. That was exactly what Zach Ertz could no longer give on a consistent basis, and it is exactly what the Commanders needed to find, and they found it in a big way. Chig Okonkwo, 3-year contract, and when they asked what this offense can expect from this signing, this dude basically laid out the exact diagnosis of the 2025 problem and then volunteered as the solution. Literally, hear the words, I want to be that spark plug, bro, like that guy that is just a playmaker, and it does not need to be from me running a route, cooking somebody, and catching the ball 50 yards downfield. Like, you can give me the ball on a screen and I will take it 50. Bro, when was the last time a Commander's tight end talked like that with that conviction, that energy, that playmaker mentality that does not depend on only one way to hurt you? And this is not empty hype. Okonkwo's numbers back the whole statement up. In the 2025 season, this player put up 342 total yards after the catch, which had that player sitting 23rd among all pass catchers in the league. Wideouts included, not tight ends, all pass catchers, and that 6.2 yards after the catch average was one of the highest across the entire NFL in that category. When you picture tight ends, you usually think big bodies who block a lot and sometimes leak out on crossing routes for possession yardage. Okonkwo is not that. Okonkwo is a flat-out problem in space. The physical profile is what makes all of that possible. Compact, explosive, with that low center of gravity that lets this player take hits and keep driving, change direction at full speed without losing balance. The profile is closer to a slot receiver or even a premium running back than to a traditional tight end. That is exactly what makes this such a nightmare for defenses. Who do you put on this player? If you throw just a linebacker out there, Okonkwo is cooking that matchup in space. If a safety is walked down on him, now you are opening one-on-one windows for McLaurin or Samuel. If you try to hide in zone and just hope someone picks him up, Okonkwo is going to find those soft spots, and Jaden Daniels is going to find Okonkwo. And let us talk Jaden Daniels specifically because this signing has a huge piece that goes way beyond. We added a tight end. This is about the development of a young quarterback. Daniels in year one flashed real brilliance, showed elite-level athleticism, showed stretches of high-level defensive processing, but the offensive inconsistency around that, mixed with injuries and a lack of reliable short-yardage options, kept the ceiling capped. Okonkwo is built in a lab to be a young QB's safety valve. Those security dump-offs the coordinator dials up when red 1 and red 2 are covered, and the QB needs to get the ball out quick with Okonkwo in the right spot. Those are not 5-yard and punt plays anymore. Those become 15, 16, 17-yard chain movers. That changes the first down math. That keeps drives alive. That takes pressure off the quarterback. There is one stat from the article that is worth repeating because it is flat out wild for a tight end. More than 54% of every receiving yard Okonkwo has ever put up in this league has come after the catch. More than half for a tight end. For context, most tight ends are sitting way lower because a lot of their yardage comes baked into the design of the route where the space is already built into the concept. Okonkwo's yards are getting created by Okonkwo, by forcing missed tackles, by breaking that first contact and keeping it moving. That is whack production on par with some of the best slot receivers in the game. And bro, it has to be said, Zach Ertz has been a total pro, a top-shelf tight end in that prime, and gave this team solid snaps when they needed them. But let us be honest, the 2024 and 2025 Ertz was not the same Ertz who used to tear up this league. The legs just did not have the same juice, and the Commanders had to evolve. Okonkwo is that evolution. The part that has me most excited is what David Blau can draw up for Okonkwo as the offensive coordinator. If Blau is smart, and the early returns say that is the case, Okonkwo is going to be moved all over the formation, in the slot, split out like a wide receiver, as an F-back, even in pre-snap motion to mess with coverage rules. That kind of flexibility from a tight end is a serious edge on the scouting tape. Opposing defensive coordinators will have to burn extra game plan time just deciding how to defend Okonkwo, and that time they are spending on that problem is time they are not spending on taking away windows for McLaurin, Samuel, or the back in the backfield. This signing, in terms of pure impact on the 2026 Commanders offense, might be the most important move of the whole offseason. Not the priciest, not the splashiest headline, but the one that might move the needle the most when it comes to what Jaden Daniels can do every single week. Okay, fam, and if you think Peters is done building this roster, just wait, porque lo que viene ahora es sobre un cornerback del vecindario, literally, who could be the 7th overall pick in April and has the juice to flip this entire secondary. News 3, Mansour Delane, the prodigal son of Silver Spring, comes home. Before we get into all the scheme and chalkboard talk, take a second and appreciate the storytelling here, because this is genuinely one of those situations where if it was a sports movie, people would say the script is too perfect to be real. Mansour Delane, born and raised in Silver Spring, Maryland, maybe 20 minutes from the Commanders Stadium, grew up watching this team, living in this market, feeling this city, and now after a college run at Virginia Tech and then LSU, where that player became an All-American and a first-team All-SEC guy, there is a trip back to the Commanders facility in Ashburn for a pre-draft visit. And if Adam Peters does what people are whispering, if that 7th overall pick has the name Delane on it, then the prodigal son of Silver Spring is suiting up at home. Bro, put that straight into the Hollywood script. But sure, feel-good stories are not enough to justify the 7th overall pick in the NFL draft. If Delane goes there, it has to be, because this is the best available player for what Washington needs in that slot. And when you flip on the tape, when you read what scouts and draft analysts are saying, the conclusion comes quick. This player can be a true number one cornerback in the NFL from year one. Lance Zierlein, one of the most respected evaluators in the business, talks about the smooth hips and efficient footwork. For a corner, that is basically the top metric, right after raw speed. The hips are what let you change direction instantly when the receiver makes that break. If your hips are tight, the receiver wins separation. Delane's hips are fluid, natural, and that allows pure mirroring of all kinds of routes. Here's what impresses me most about the Delane profile. That player played the 2025 season with a core muscle injury. For anyone who does not know, a core injury is brutal for an athlete. You do not just slap a wrap on it and keep rolling like nothing happened. It affects every explosive move, every change of direction, every jump ball, and this player still came out an All-American and first-team All-SEC with that injury. That is not just talent, that is toughness. That is competitor DNA. That is exactly the type of player Dan Quinn has been chasing since day one in Washington. Zierlein also highlights something else that jumps out: Delane's violence at the catch point. There are corners who can cover, who stay in phase, who do the technique thing right, but when the ball arrives, they hesitate for a split second, worry about the flag, and give the receiver that little window to lock it in. Delane does not do that. Delane attacks that football with the intent to wreck everything. Makes press coverage so uncomfortable from snap one that quarterbacks think twice before throwing to that side. Routinely shuts down catch windows before the quarterback even finishes the throwing motion. That is anticipation. That is high-level football IQ layered on top of elite athletic traits. Now fit in this roster, because that piece is huge for why this makes so much sense. Washington already has Mike Sainristil, a second-round pick in 2024, who has flashed some good things. There is Trey Amos, second-rounder in 2025, another young corner with upside, then Amik Robertson in free agency. But none of those three is that true number one boundary corner who could shadow the opponent's top wideout every week without needing safety help over the top. Delane can be that at 22 years old with 6-foot height, 187 pounds, and the press coverage skill set that has already shown on film. That is a classic number one corner profile. The kind of player Washington has not had consistently in years, and when you stack that on top of everything they're building up front in the pass rush, OA off the edge, the interior pieces, Jones's disruptive philosophy, why the picture gets scary for opposing quarterbacks. The formula is simple. If your pass rush is good, your coverage does not have to be perfect. It just has to hold long enough. But if your coverage is good and your pass rush is also good, then quarterbacks have nowhere to hide. No comfortable side of the field, no easy read, no safe throw. That is what Washington is aiming at. And Delane at 7 is the piece that completes it. Dan Quinn dropped a line in that article that basically sums up the whole philosophy. We want guys who breathe fire on the perimeter. You watch Mansour's tape at LSU, and the sheer violence at the catch point jumps right off the screen. This player competes like every single rep is the last one. Keep it a buck. When Quinn talks about a prospect like that using phrases like breathe fire and violence at the catch point, that is exactly the template of player that gets valued most. Not passive talent, not some smooth, pretty corner who does everything technically fine, but never does anything that makes you jump out of your seat. The type who's gonna scrap for every yard, every ball, every rep like life is on the line. And there is one more layer to this story that cannot be ignored: the connection to the region. Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas, Maryland, Virginia, the DMV as a whole, have a very real football culture. Commanders fans who grew up here feel a different kind of way about local players. We have already seen it with other local guys over the years. When that player is someone who came up in Silver Spring, who knows those neighborhoods, who understands what it means to be a fan of this team, the impact in the locker room and in the fan base hits different. It is real. It is personal. And that has value. If Peters pulls the trigger in April and calls Mansour Delane's name at 7, that move is not just adding the best available corner in the draft. It is adding a symbol. It is adding a story. It is adding a player who is going to represent something for this city beyond just on-field performance. And in the culture Quinn is building, that kind of connection matters more than people think. Fam, when you line up these three moves and look at them together, the full plan comes into focus so clearly, it almost takes your breath away. A $100 million pass rusher coming in with the perfect mentality for Jones's scheme and Quinn's culture. An explosive tight end who might literally be the most versatile weapon in Jaden Daniels' 2026 offense, and a local All-American cornerback who could be the final piece in a defensive puzzle that, if finished the right way, turns the Commanders into one of the hardest teams to game plan against in the NFC. This is not a team trying to just survive. This is a team trying to dominate, and the gap between those two things is massive. 2025 hurt, we know that. Daniels' injuries, the offensive inconsistency, the stomach punch frustration we all felt as fans. But what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn are doing this offseason is the direct answer to that pain. They are closing the leaks. They are raising both the floor and the ceiling of this roster at the same time. They are building an identity that does not depend on everything going perfectly, but on having enough quality players on every side of the ball to take the hits and keep swinging. That is the type of team that makes deep postseason runs. That is the type of team that has opponents worried when they see them in January. Washington Commanders 2026. Bro, this is for real. And we are going to be right here every step of the way, breaking it down, analyzing it, living it together as the family we are. If this video hit you, if you felt even a fraction of the hype I am feeling while talking about all this, drop that like right now, fam. You do not owe it to me. You owe it to this team that is finally moving the right way. Subscribe if you are not part of this family yet, and hit the comments and tell me, which offseason move has you the most hyped? Owe the Destroyer, Okonkwo the Spark Plug, or Delane the Son of Silver Spring? I need to know. I will see you in the next video. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Let us go.